This video series is going to be for those who work with the people coming from different cultures and countries. Unlike pre-COVID situation, when we used to meet people in person, now depending on our work, in major part of the time, we meet people virtually, and that makes communication even more challenging. In virtual meetings, we don't have the way to understand the people's energy whom we are talking to. In that case, in order to be productive, virtual communication has to be even more precise, and this can be challenging, especially when you don't know the person in front of you at all. But I have something to tell you, through which even if you don't know the person whom you are talking to at all, you have at least an idea about them to make an effective communication. And you could adopt this communicative strategy according to your targeted audience. So in short, anyone by profession or otherwise need to communicate with people from different cultures, countries. This series is going to be particularly for them. People in international management and cross-cultural leaderships in multinational companies. The country leaders take decisions based on the targeted countries or cultures audience, their customs and values. Hence, we who are involved in cross-cultural interactions need to be sensitive to the cultural differences, customs and protocols across countries. How these customs are created and they differ from one to another, I discussed in a different video. You could also watch it after this video, of course, by clicking on the I button. Now, straight to the point. Our world is populated by different people coming from different cultures. And when people communicate, they do so in their local understanding. Since we all have our cultural influence in the way we speak, the way we interpret and process the incoming information, this becomes crucial for global organizations and countries who have to work across cultures. According to the Dutch scholar Hofstede, when it comes to particularly for the international business, promoting cultural sensitivity will assist employees to work more effectively and more harmoniously, even if they come from different countries. Hofstede's findings are from IBM. However, these findings are easily adaptable for your organizations or your personal communication skill. Hofstede found 6 broad categories to understand any culture, to bridge the gap between cultural understanding while communicating amongst different cultures and countries. These 6 categories are the patterns through which we can understand any culture. These 6 categories refer to the 6 common dimensions that are found in any culture. And these 6 dimensions are: first one is the power distance index, the second one is individualism and collectivism, the third one is masculinity and femininity, the fourth one is uncertainty avoidance, the fifth one is short-term and long-term orientation, last but not the least, the sixth one is indulgence and resistance. Each of this category or dimension has its own ranking, which are mutually exclusive and more subjective. After understanding each of the 6 dimensions in detail with examples, finally we would also learn how to use them practically in our walks of life to improve our intercultural communications. So let's start. The first one is power distance index. Let's first understand what does it refer to. This power distance index refers to how cultures manage its societal hierarchies and inequalities. Power distance index tries to understand the extent to which the less powerful member of society or an organization or like in a family accept and expect the power is or should be distributed unequally. In regard to the power distribution, Hofstede notes that all the societies are unequal, but some societies are more unequal than the others. This index tries to understand what is the intensity of this inequality. In order to understand with more clarity, we can see that in a high PDI, power distance index country, inequality is like a norm. welcome and well accepted by the society. In these societies, the less powerful people think of the more powerful people as superior human beings. Societal rules and even laws can be changed for the more powerful people, whereas the countries with low PDI number, in any circumstance, the societal rules or the laws cannot be changed. In high PDI cultures, societies and countries, there is an absolute centralism of power or oligarchy where the power rests within a small number of people. Societal innovations should be supported by those powerful people, otherwise they will not be implemented. On the contrary, if we see the countries with low positions in PDI index, we could see their people strive to achieve an equitable distribution of power, moreover demanding a justification for inequality. Another example would be in a high power distance society, parents teach the children obedience, while in a low power distance society or country, we see the parents treat the children as equals. Also, the subordinates must be consulted in low power distance societies, whereas in high power distance societies, the people with the powerful position only can order to their subordinates or command on them, so that those subordinates only can fulfill their leader's command. They don't discuss with their subordinates to have their view on a particular matter. People or individuals from low power distance society tend to be more open, tend to openly express their agreements and disagreements, ask questions, and expect to be involved in development and intervention plans. On the other hand, the people or individuals coming from a high distance cultural background, they only tend to show their agreements with the leaders and they want to do exactly the way their leaders ask them to do. So more like a loyal follower. So by now we have an understanding about power distance index and what it refers to. The next question is where we could see high power distance values and low power distance values, and which are the cultures who does have also medium ones. Let's have a look. So here we could see the in power distance index, Malaysia tops the list with the PDI index number 104 out of 120, followed by Guatemala, Panama, Philippines, Mexico, Venezuela, and there comes China. These are the countries where we could see the distance between the powerful people and less powerful people is far. So there is a social, cultural distance they could feel between them. On the other hand, if we see Austria, Israel, Denmark, New Zealand, Ireland, the psychological distance between the leaders and the other people who work in humble positions, the distance between them is not much. So they feel all are equal. And this psychological distance is very prominent when we communicate across the cultures. So when we know how the other culture perceives and distributes their power, we have an idea that how we could communicate so that it can be more effective. For example, for business purpose or any other negotiation, if you are talking with a Chinese, you would rather use more respectful tones, whereas you could use light-hearted, friendly tones with an Austrian or Israelis or a Danish person. In this index, India's position is somewhere in the middle with 77 PDI number, and it shares with Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone. And now let's understand how this power distance index influence individuals and people's attitudes and behaviors. The divisions of these roles in society is also reflected in linguistic uses. In countries such as Malaysia, China, Saudi Arabia, with high power index values have hierarchical cultures where there is a clear division between more powerful people and less powerful people, and the role is made explicit with the use of appropriate titles and linguistic forms. For example, in China, there are two pronouns in second person, one with respect, which is nin, another one is ni. So nin you could use with the person you want to show respect to. For example, someone you don't know, some elderly people, a doctor, professors, teachers, whereas you could use ni with your friends. The linguistic examples are also prominent with titles. When we see in high power index countries, people tend to address with their respected professions. For example, Dr. X, Professor X, or if you are not sure about their profession, you could just simply add Sir or Madam. In countries such as Switzerland and Sweden, Austria, Norway, Denmark, Israel, these countries belong to low PDI values. Here we could see the power is equally distributed and you could call a person by their given name without adding any title or their profession or anything to make them feel good or respected. Nowadays, when we need to know something, what do? We Google it, right? And then we go to the relevant website to acquire more about our intended information that we want to acquire. Exactly. Websites of multinational companies, national governments are the first source of communication to know more about them, right? Let's have a look and read between the lines. As we saw before, China belongs to high power index values. So a good example to understand is by seeing Chinese government's official website in Chinese and English. So now the question is, why would we see the same website in two different languages? Needless to say, two different languages are for two different target audience. English one is for international audience and the Chinese one is for domestic audience, and two different audience, they have their own cultures, and China has got its own values that is seen there in PDI index. So if we see the English version of Chinese government's official website, which is supposed to be for international public, which is a combination of many cultures together, so it shares more general information about China without showing any leader to showcase any PDI values. Whereas the Chinese version of the same website is for the domestic Chinese audience, hence it is adjusted with China's domestic culture, showing the paramount leaders and their works. And this phenomena exemplifies and reaffirms that China's high PDI values. It shows the power of the leader. Now let's take another example from the topper of the list, Malaysia. So now we are on the homepage of University of Malaysia. There are three images. First one is a leader in the middle with coordinates, wishing something and talking about serving the nation while impacting the world. The second image on the same homepage is congratulating a newly appointed board of directors of University of Malaysia. And the third image, it's also appreciating a former board of directors in University of Malaysia. So here we could see again why it is high PDI value country. On other hand, if we see the homepage of Vienna University, we could see some ordinary people, some laughs, they're working, and we can also see people in a library in the right hand bottom corner symbolize equality. Also argue the behavior from a low PDI value country, Austria. Now we have had two examples. The first one is the government website, which is the torch barrier of a national culture. The second one is universities, which are the intellectual part or the brains of a country, of a culture, of a society. On another aspect, corporate sectors, which is also very crucial for the economy. We could have a look on that, how this PDI distributed in different cultures and societies also influence corporate cultures. Now let's have an example from corporate sector. As we saw before, United Arab Emirates, UAE, belongs to high PDI value countries. Let's take an example from their corporate sector. And an obvious choice will be an oil company. Let's have a look. So here we are on the homepage of Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, which is a state-owned oil company of United Arab Emirates. The first thing here, we could see an image of their supreme leader. Regardless of the exceptionality of this situation, it's also very evident that a national oil company shows its leader and mourns his demise on its online homepage, which kind of confirms its high ranking. In order to make fair comparison, let's compare this website with another oil oil company which is also controlled by another state but from a country which belongs to a low PDI value. Let's take an example of Norway, which belongs to a low PDI country, and Norway's state-controlled oil company's name is Equinor. So let's have a look on the homepage of Equinor. So now we are on the homepage of Equinor. The first message we see that we energize the lives of 170 million people every day. So here we could see talking about people followed by an image of their work of oil extraction. So here the focus is on the people and the work. So no power of any leaders is prominent or visible here. We could see some clear differences of power distance, state-controlled oil companies, but based in two different cultures, two different nations. And these two nations belong to two different PDI values. UAE belongs to high PDI value, whereas Norway belongs to low PDI value. So I hope now you have a better understanding about the first of 6 cultural dimensions that we could see in any culture. If we know these 6 categories of any culture or countries, it's easier for us to communicate with someone who is coming from that country or culture. And amongst them, in this video, we also discussed the first dimension out of these 6 dimensions, which is power distance index. And I hope now you have a better understanding of power distance index and how you could understand if a person is coming from a power distance index, what are the behaviors and attitudes they do by themselves and they expect from others to give them. This way you could adapt your communication strategy in order to have an effective communication while making your communication productive and make the most out of it. The second episode is going to be on the second dimension of collectivism and individualism and how we could consider them in our communication strategy to make the most out of it. See you in next episode and thank you so much for being here today.